Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories, where we play tales to take you away from today. We have a really big shoe for you today. What? One that should have the kid in you saying, "Let's go for ice cream." Yeah! To start things off, we have a 5-minute mystery with some new news. Then we play a Raymond Burr Western and follow that up with a short story from none other than O. Henry. Sound like fun? Yeah! Well, great then. Let's get to that 5-minute mystery.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is brought to you by YouTube. Now you can listen to that wonderful podcast, Ron's Amazing Stories, on YouTube. If you need another reason to listen to YouTube, now you have it. So, go subscribe today.
The entrance to the Lawrence house on Center Street is lighted by an unshielded bulb. Beneath it stands a policeman. Suddenly a woman comes running up the porch steps.
What's the matter? Has something happened?
Do you live here, ma'am?
I'm Mrs. Lawrence's personal maid and housekeeper. I've worked for her for years.
Knew her pretty well, then?
Of course. What do you mean, knew her?
I'm sorry to have to tell you this, ma'am, but Mrs. Lawrence was murdered tonight, a couple of hours ago.
Murdered? Let me go in there. Let me go in.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Anything I can do to help, I'll be glad to do.
Yes, there is one thing you can do. Take me to the police station. Murder, is it? Well, I'll tell a thing or two now. And that's how it was, Inspector. I went out for a couple of hours tonight. It was my regular night out. And when I came back, that policeman refused to let me in.
I see. Well, Miss...
Just call me Agnes, please, sir. People have for so long now.
All right, Agnes. Now tell me. How long were you gone tonight?
Not more than a couple of hours, Inspector.
I see. Everything was all right when you left?
Perfectly. Everything was fine, except that I never did like the idea of her seeing him again. I believe she was expecting him tonight, after I'd left.
And just who is him?
Why, her husband, I mean. They were divorced some years ago. He was a friend.
And Mrs. Lawrence was seeing her husband again?
The last few nights, sir. All of a sudden, unexpected-like, Mrs. Lawrence came in one night and told me her husband was coming for dinner. I told her then I didn't like it.
Was there any trouble?
Not a bit, sir. In fact, things went too well. In fact, I believe Mrs. Lawrence was getting a bit soft on him again, and after all these years, too.
Tell me, where does he live?
Over in Cranville. He's lived there for over a year now.
That's about 15 miles away, isn't it?
That's it, sir.
Well, he could have driven that and been back in time for an alibi. Tell me, did anyone else know that Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence had become friendly again?
Not a soul, sir. It was a secret that just the three of us knew. But if you want my opinion, it was him that poisoned her. Must have been him. There was the very devil in that man.
Agnes, up to a point, I believe you're right. But because of just one thing, one mistake in your story, I'm going to hold you for the murder of Mrs. Lawrence.
The inspector has a good reason for holding Agnes for murder. Do you know what it is? We'll tell you in just a minute. But first...
Okay, what could she have possibly said to the police to tip them off? I think it might have more to do with what she should not have said. After all, less is more, and when it comes to murder, less is always better. This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you today by YouTube. They now host Ron's Amazing Stories.
And now, back to our 5-minute mystery and the murder of Mrs. Lawrence.
Me? Murder? I wasn't even home when she died.
Agnes, I know it was you who murdered Mrs. Lawrence. When you saw her and her husband becoming friendly again, you believed it would affect your inheritance. How do I know you're the murderer? For just one good reason, Agnes. I specifically gave orders that the method of murder would not be discussed with anyone. You yourself said that Mrs. Lawrence was poisoned. Only one person could have known that. The murderer himself.
Simple solution to yet another vicious crime. This 5-minute mystery was brought to you by YouTube. Now you can even listen to that wonderful podcast, Ron's Amazing Stories, on YouTube. If you need another reason to listen to YouTube, you now have it. So subscribe today. By the mid-1950s, Westerns were the thing on old-time radio. Whether it was for your son, daughter, wife, father, or even mother, there was a Western for everyone. However, there were only a few series that went that extra mile to provide us with historical truth and believable characters. In 1956, Fort Laramie was one of those. When it began, most of the actors on the West Coast were doing some television and movie work, so the program was rehearsed and taped for transcription during the evening. Once a week, the cast and crew gathered at CBS Studio One in Hollywood to record the show. Believe it or not, in 1956, this was the last radio production studio in use in California. The series debuted on January 22, 1956, with an episode called Playing Indian. In total, 41 episodes were broadcast, and all of these survive today. Fort Laramie stars Raymond Burr as the captain of cavalry. Now, this was a transition time for Burr, and he would begin his role of Perry Mason a few months later in 1957. He would go on to play that role for 9 seasons. Our story comes from about the middle of the Fort Laramie run and is called The Buffalo Hunters. Remember how I told you that Fort Laramie told the truth? Well, listen to this one. Many tried to glorify the buffalo hunts as sport. This episode, not so much. It first aired on September 9th, 1956.
At the gallop! Follow! Fort Laramie. Fort Laramie, starring Raymond Burr as Captain Lee Quince. Specially transcribed tales of the dark and tragic ground of the wild frontier, the saga of fighting men who rode the rim of empire, and the dramatic story of Lee Quince, Captain of Cavalry. Sergeant? This one's fresh killed.
And fresh skinned, sir.
How many buffalo we found this way?
Well, we come on 10 with this one. The men are fanning out looking for more.
They wouldn't be far away if there are more.
They're right dumb, aren't they, Captain? Buffalo must be the dumbest critters they is.
Well, couldn't call them crafty, but they're half blind. Can't see trouble when they're heading right into it. Lieutenant Sybert's back from the agency yet?
Well, yes, sir. He brought the wagon. They're loading carcasses in it back by the Waller.
They better get a move on. That meat'll cook in this heat.
Captain, you got the feeling there's something wrong?
Wrong?
Well, I've seen Injuns kill buffalo before, lots of them. But I never seen them leave this much meat on them.
Maybe agency life is making them lazy, Gorse. Maybe their bellies are too full.
Now, you don't think that, Captain.
I sure don't. I'm going to talk to Mr. Syberts. Oh, are all of them cut this way?
I think so. I didn't rightly study them, though.
Then study them. All of them.
Let me know what you find.
Yes, sir.
Have any trouble getting the wagon, Mr. Syberts?
Oh, no, sir. The agent seemed glad to know we were bringing meat in.
That seem odd to you?
Well, no, sir. I never saw an Indian agency that couldn't use food.
Neither did I.
Oh, excuse me, sir. All right, man, you can move the wagon now. Pick up the rest of the carcasses.
Just a minute.
Yes, sir.
I want to take a look at these.
Hold it a minute.
All right, men, carry on.
Yes, Captain.
A lot of waste there, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of waste. How far to the agency? About 5 miles?
That's right.
You went there, you got the wagon from the agent. He said they'd be glad to get the meat. That all he said, Mr. Syberts?
I think so, sir. Oh, one thing he said when we first rode up.
Yes?
He asked us if we'd been engaged, a battle.
Uh-huh.
Said that early this morning he heard a lot of gunfire.
Yeah, I'll bet they did.
Captain Quint, sir?
Yes, Sergeant?
I studied them carcasses, all of them, like you said. They're all cut the same way.
Skinned? With the hump ribs cut away?
And that's all.
The men locate any more?
No, sir, just the 10.
According to Mr. Syberts, the Indian agent claims he heard a lot of gunfire this morning.
Well, it was a clear morning. The sound would carry all right. You saw the wagon tracks, Captain.
Yeah, I saw him. Tell the men to get a move on with their loading, Sergeant. Form a detail to haul the carcasses to the agency.
Yes, sir.
We'll rendezvous at the fork of the Rawhide and proceed back to Fort Laramie.
Yes, sir. Captain Quince, what about the wagon tracks?
All right, Jenkins.
You see these tracks here? The fresh ones?
From the wagon that was just here.
That's right. Now, over here. There. You see those?
Well, yes, sir. They're not as fresh, but you can sure see them. Our wagon wasn't over here, Captain.
And it wasn't down there where they're loading now. Or over yonder where the last carcasses were found.
Well, that's right, sir, but...
Indians don't hunt buffalo with wagons, Mr. Syberts. And when they kill buffalo with guns or arrows, they don't just skin them, cut the hump ribs free, and leave the rest to rot in the prairie. From its horns to its chips, Indians use all the buffalo.
You think white men did this, Captain?
I'm thinking white men. And if buffalo hunters are moving up to the high plains, we got trouble, Mr. Syberts.
That's reservation land, Captain.
That didn't make much matter to them, Major.
You seem very sure this is the work of buffalo hunters, not Indians.
If it's Indians, they've changed their whole tradition of hunting buffalo and killing them. I tell you, these were fresh killed. And the only meat gone was the hump ribs.
Well, that's the best meat.
Yeah, to you and me, yeah. But the Indians eat everything in the buffalo, including
I know, Lee, I know.
What they don't eat on the spot, they take with them, even the horns.
Always use the horns for tools, implements, don't they?
Yeah, always.
I still hope you're wrong, Lee. It's a small hope, but it's there.
I'd like to be dead wrong. But I saw too much. And the Indian agent heard too much.
The battle?
Remember Texas? You get a clear morning, you could hear those buffalo guns roaring for miles. Enough of them sound like a pitched battle.
Wonder if they're still packing those old Sharps 50s. They're awful heavy.
Gotta be. They shoot ounce slugs, 125 grains of powder, 600 grains of lead, sometimes more.
And the Army struggles along with 450 grain slugs.
Well, we're not killing buffalo.
No, we're not. You know the position the Army's in as well as I do. White men aren't allowed on reservations to hunt, to mine, to anything. We can warn them if we see them before they move into Indian territory. If we catch them there, we can run them off or bring them back to the guardhouse. But we got to see them first.
We may not see him, Major. Until it's too late, we may not ever see him. And then the Army will be in another position.
What other position?
Fighting a war.
Don't you go roaming off now, Goofy. I want the wagon here so as we can load it.
Awful hot just sitting here.
Well, you set, you hear?
I hear.
Hey, soldier, this here the sutler's store?
That's it, mister.
Much obliged.
Well, now, you got yourself some knife there, ain't you?
Sharp as your eyes, soldier.
Straight blade, huh?
This one is. Got 'em curved, too. They're nice.
You like curved knives better, do you?
I like what I need. Sometimes I need a straight blade. Sometimes I need 'em curved.
What kind of man's got a need for knives, straight blade or curved?
You goading me, soldier?
I'd be a fool to goad a man sharpening a fine knife.
Yeah. You would. You'd be a plain fool. There's a fine edge coming. Fine edge.
It's your business cutting things?
Let me show you that curved blade, soldier. Now look at that. Ain't that pretty the way it half circles?
You think it's pretty?
It fits your neck, soldier. Right close and neat like. Now that's what I call pretty. The fit of it.
Pretty enough. Looks dull to me.
It gets dull. Cutting.
Before I cut a man's throat with it, I'd see it was razor sharp.
I will. I'll tend to that right now. But I'll keep that straight blade handy. In case I run into a soldier who wants to goad a body.
I knew a man like you once. Looked the same, acted the same, talked the same. He was from Texas, this man I knew.
A lot of good men from Texas.
This man, he was a skinner.
A lot of good men to skinners.
This man, though, he got himself killed.
How's a man gonna get himself killed skinning buffalo?
He made the mistake, this Texas man, going into Indian territory. Went up into the Indian Nation. Got himself killed.
You don't know nothing about skinning.
I heard about this man.
You're dumb, soldier. Dumb as can be.
I ain't dumb enough to skin buffalo in Indian country.
I make $50 a month in my keep. With that, I get 50 cents a head on every buffalo I skin.
You do it fast, mister?
The faster I do it, the more money I make.
I'd sure admire to see you at your work.
Yeah, you would.
I would. I never seen a real good skinner at work.
You ain't?
You wanted to please a body, you could tell him how you set about your work.
You thinking about turning skinner?
Oh, I don't think I got the gift for it. Of course, I'm a willing hand and all that.
How are you on thinking?
I'm not too good to tell the truth.
You might make a skinner at that. The thinking part, what's done of it, that's the hunter job. Old Jake Cuppy there. He's got to find the herd, do the shooting.
Jake Cuppy?
In the sutlers. He's buying lead now and powder. He's got a line on a big herd.
Where?
What do I care? A big herd, soldier. He'll get me there, do the killing. All I got to do is traipse after him and skin him.
You was going to tell me how you manage that.
You see, you work with a good hunter. That comes first. Old Jake Cuppy, he's good. He shoots them right in the lights.
Lights?
The lights, the lungs.
Now, here I thought a good hunter'd take aim on his heart.
The heart? No. You hit one in the heart, even square in the heart. He's going to run all over on you before he dies, charging around, pawing the earth, carrying on. No need a skinner wasting himself moving all over.
I can see that.
You hit one in the light, soldier. He may take a step or two on you, but no more than that. He drops right on the spot. Know how I mean? A skinner don't go to first one spot, then another.
Well, he don't waste himself, I understand.
And the gift you talk about. I got it for fair. I come on him. At first, I ripped him down the belly from the throat to the tail.
With a straight blade.
More than likely, yeah. Then I cut down each his legs. Go around his head, clean up to his ears. Listen here.
I figured the curved blade there.
And now myself, I don't bother with the rest of the head. I right away set to roll the skin back, just for started. Then I draw a rope tight on the little flap of his neck that's free, see?
Uh-huh.
And I make the other end fast to the team, and I kick them up. Then pulling that away, shucks that hide right off in that animal. And that's a sight. I tell you, that's a sight.
I just bet it is.
50 cents. Every time I do it. I skinned as high as 50 buffalo a day. Now, that amounts to... Well, old Jake Cup, he usually does that counting up for me.
I guess you think a lot of Mr. Cuppy, huh?
What I got to think of him. I like skinning a soldier. That's what I like.
You putting up here at Fort Laramie a spell?
Tonight, anyway. Maybe longer. What do you care?
As long as you're here, I just want to learn all I can from you, that's all.
It's a good life. A lot of good men as skinners.
Your name Jake Cuppy, mister? Your name. It's Jake Cuppy?
You don't want to steal up on a man that is eating, Captain. Might make him edgy.
I make you edgy, mister?
I'm getting over it. Sit down as long as you're here. Oh, here, I'll move my rifle aside. You got your eye on it, too.
I seen big 50s before.
I declare it opens a man's eyes, stopping off at an army post. First they tell me I'm welcome to put up with the enlisted men here, and then the only ones that come poking around are officers.
That's so?
How come you know about big 50s? Lieutenant claimed he never seen one before.
Mr. Sybert's never saw a buffalo hunter before.
Well, he's seen one now. Where do you find them? Like him, so full of book learning.
We find all kinds, mister.
Yeah, well, you found one there. Now, he's up on all the law in these parts. I'm not talking about your army law now. I'm talking territory law. I think that's how he said it. Something about there's a time of year you can't shoot what Lieutenant calls wildlife.
There's a law.
About hunting?
First Territorial Assembly passed it. It's called Wildlife Conservation.
Well, I declare. In here, I thought the Army was a shooting outfit.
It is, mister.
Now, I'm going to tell you what I told the lieutenant. You're going to make laws out here. You make them about the Indians. But you leave a white man to his work. You hear?
Must be you've shot up all the herds in the South Plains.
Oh, I wouldn't take all the credit for that. Others got their due coming. I'm gnawing at you, Captain. Same way you're gnawing at me. You spoke your piece. Now, why don't
You're wrong, mister.
That's another thing. I'm almost never wrong.
There's treaty law that says you can't go into Indian territory. That means all the land north of Fort Laramie.
I'm getting a mite worried about the Army. Ain't they doing any killing no more?
We're obliged to warn you. If you do go in, we can't protect you.
I just don't recollect asking for any protection. You ought to come along, Captain. This hunting's for a real sporting man.
I saw some of your slaughter the other day. That's real sporting.
Now you hear me what I say. I get paid on how many buffalo hides I ship. That's fine. Now then, folks in the East are developing a taste for buffalo meat. All I gotta do is get it to the railroad. And that's fine. I get paid for that, too.
I'd hate to have to fight a war on your account, mister.
Maybe I'd be on your side. I'm good at shooting. I tell you what. You figure a price on Injun hides, Injun meat. Maybe I will be on your side, Captain.
This is Kit Carson country, isn't it, Captain, along the Powder River?
He was up here, sure. All along the bottoms of the Powder. It was black with buffalo then.
Well, the big herds are still up this way, aren't they?
The Indians think so. That's good enough for me. And for Jake Cuppy, apparently.
You take men like Kit Carson, now he was a trapper, a hunter, but you hear good things about him. The Indians liked him.
You're not comparing Carson to Cuppy, are you, Mr. Sybert?
No, sir, I'm trying to figure out the difference. Both seem to be after the same things.
Seem to be, maybe. The early trappers, the hunters, the mountain men, they learned a lot from the Indians. Made friends with them, like you say. But more, they came to hunt like Indians hunt.
You mean they hunted as they had need?
More of that, they knew what conservation meant even then. That if you kill more than the herd can bear young, you'll run out of quarry. A man like Cuppy now, he likes a slaughter.
I hope we find him, Captain.
I hope we find him. In time, Mr. Sybert.
The wagon tracks we're following, Captain?
Now, what about them?
Well, looks like they stopped just ahead, sir, right at that line of trees.
Patrol! Halt!
They could be in there, Captain. Cuppy and Gulfy.
They could, Mr. Syberts. Come on, Gorse.
Yes, sir.
Sergeant Gorse and I are going to move flat into the trees, Mr. Syberts. Have the patrol stand to cover us.
Yes, sir.
One shot out of those trees and you move in.
Right, Captain.
All right, Sergeant. Run crouch down to the brush. Then we move flat in their bellies.
Yes, sir.
Let's go.
Patrol, the police service is prepared to charge.
Them high-bed wagons like Gophy had, they move through here better than we do, Captain.
I can't see Cuppy making a camp here.
I can't see him coming in here over the Army's warning.
Well, just about to the trees, Gorse. Now, don't straighten until we're in them.
Yes, sir.
All right, now.
They're not as thick as they look, Captain.
Well, here, ahead there, Gorse.
The wagon. Well, it's Gophy's wagon, all right. Some hides here in the bed.
His team's gone. Must be thinking to drag the hides back here.
From how far away, I wonder?
I don't know.
I'm trying to figure 'em, Captain. I can see they might hide the wagon so as we couldn't follow its tracks, but we can track horses' hooves just as well.
Not this way, Gorse.
Grain sacks. Well, sure.
Yeah. You fix grain sacks to their hooves, it muffles the sound, leaves almost no hoof prints.
They're smarter than they act, Captain.
Are they, Gorse?
Buffalo guns.
That's one sound they can't muffle. Come on, Sergeant.
We've ridden 5 miles at least, Captain, and no sound to guide us for the last 3.
Don't need sound with sign like that ahead, Mr. Syberts.
That brown haze like dust?
It is dust. Means a big herd. Probably been stampeded. There's bottomland just after that rise where Clear Creek feeds into the Powder. We'll make for that.
Yes, sir.
At the gallop! Ho! Patrol! Halt! Right out with me, Mr. Syberts.
Yes, sir.
Captain, look.
I'm looking, Mr. Syberts. I said it was a big herd.
But it's like a massacre. Must be 1,000 buffalo.
It is a massacre. That much killing of anything without cause, it is a massacre.
Well, Jake Cuppy, he couldn't have shot them all.
He could shoot enough with Gophie helping. Likely the rest were stampeded to death.
And slaughter, that's all you can call it. I don't see how it could happen, so much of it.
Buffalo don't have much eyesight. They count on smelling signs of danger. Cuppy's trick is to shoot from far enough away so they can't smell him. We better go down there, Mr. Syberts.
Cuppy, would he cause all this and then hide out, Captain?
He might. Knowing we'd be coming after him. Knowing he and Gophie couldn't hope to haul them all out before we got here. You seen any that's been skinned?
No, sir, not a one.
Captain Quince, over here.
Well, now. That explains a lot of things.
I come on their horses first, down further. They're shot full of arrows, too.
Both of them are still warm, Captain. They haven't been dead long.
1,000 dead buffalo. 2 dead men. That's a lot of death. A lot of waste.
The Indians must still be around, Captain.
Yeah, they'd still be around. Up in the hills, likely.
Those arrows, sir, they're in Cuppy and Gophie and the horses, but not the buffalo.
The Indians weren't after buffalo, Mr. Syberts. Come on, let's move out.
Captain, we'll have to fight the Indians for this?
Not today. Not this patrol. But this isn't the last of the buffalo hunters. More'll come all the time, and we'll fight wars over it.
We've got to just leave things this way?
The sooner we go, Mr. Syberts, the sooner the Indians will move down and get the meat, the hides. Sometimes all a man can do is turn, walk away.
Fort Laramie is produced and directed by Norman Macdonald and stars Raymond Burr as Lee Quince, Captain of Cavalry, with Vic Perrin as Sergeant Gorse. The script was specially written for Fort Laramie by Kathleen Height, with sound patterns by Bill James and Ray Kemper. Musical supervision by Amerigo Marino. Featured in the cast were James Nusser and Barney Phillips. Jack Moyles is Major Daggett, and Harry Bartell is Lieutenant Syberts.
Company, attention! Dismiss.
Next week, another transcribed story of the Northwest frontier and the troopers who fought under Lee Quince, captain of cavalry. Have you a youngster of school age? Right now, for the new fall term, parents and citizens will discover that the enrollment in their community schools has increased tremendously. That means an acute shortage of teachers, schoolrooms, and supplies. Help your youngsters and others in your community by joining up with your local civic and educational groups. Act now to correct the great shortage of teachers and equipment. CBS Radio urges you to help make your community schools fit for your community's youngsters.
I love stories like this one. I think it's because it takes us to a time when things weren't complicated and living was your job. When Norman Macdonald created Fort Laramie in late 1955, he made it clear to his writers that historical accuracy was going to be the key to the series. Correct geographic names, authentic Indian practices, and military terminology was insisted upon. Even the fort names of the original buildings were used. So when a radio character referred to Sutler's Store or Old Bedlam, which was the officers' quarters, they're referring to actual structures in the original fort. Pretty cool and very true.
As read by Amazing Stories, read by amazing people.
This time on As Read By, we have what can only be described as a true classic short story written by O. Henry himself. It is called The Last Leaf and is read by Ted McElroy.
The Last Leaf by O. Henry. In a little district west of Washington Square, the streets have run crazy and broken themselves into small strips called places. These places make strange angles and curves. One street crosses itself a time or two. An artist once discovered a valuable possibility in this street. Suppose a collector with a bill for paints, paper, and canvas should, in traversing this route, suddenly meet himself coming back without a cent having been paid on account. So, to quaint old Greenwich Village, the art people soon came prowling, hunting for north windows and 18th-century gables and Dutch attics and low rents. Then they imported some pewter mugs and a chafing dish or two from 6th Avenue and became a colony. At the top of a squatty 3-story brick, Sue and Johnsy had their studio. Johnsy was familiar for Joanna. One was from Maine, the other from California. They had met at the table d'hôte of an 8th Street Delmonico's and found their tastes in art, chicory salad, and bishop's leaves so congenial that the joint studio resulted. That was in May. In November, a cold, unseen stranger, whom the doctors called pneumonia, stalked about the colony, touching one here and there with his icy fingers. Over on the east side, this ravager strode boldly, smiting his victims by scores, but his feet trod slowly through the maze of the narrow and moss-grown places. Mr. Pneumonia was not what you would call a chivalric old gentleman. A mite of a little woman with blood thinned by California zephyrs was hardly fair game for the red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. But Johnsy he smote, and she lay, scarcely moving, on her painted iron bedstead, looking through the small Dutch window panes at the blank side of the next brick house. One morning the busy doctor invited Sue into the hallway with a shaggy gray eyebrow. "She has one chance in, let us say, 10, he said, as he shook down the mercury in his clinical thermometer. And that chance is for her to want to live. This way people have of lining up on the side of the undertaker makes the entire pharmacopoeia look silly. Your little lady has made up her mind that she's not going to get well. Has she anything on her mind? She wanted to paint the Bay of Naples some day, said Sue. Paint? Bosh! Has she anything on her mind worth thinking twice? A man, for instance? A man, said Sue, with a Jew's harp twang in her voice. Is a man worth... But no, doctor, there is nothing of the kind. Well, it is a weakness, then, said the doctor. I will do all that science, so far as it may filter through my efforts, can accomplish. But whenever my patient begins to count the carriages in her funeral procession, I subtract 50% from the curative power of medicines. If you'll get her to ask one question about the new winter styles in cloak sleeves, I will promise you a 1 in 5 chance for her, instead of 1 in 10. After the doctor had gone, Sue went into the workroom and cried a Japanese napkin to a pulp. Then she swaggered into Johnsey's room with her drawing-board, whistling ragtime. Johnsey lay, scarcely making a ripple under the bedclothes, with her face toward the window. Sue stopped whistling, thinking she was asleep. She arranged her board and began a pen-and-ink drawing to illustrate a magazine story. Young artists must pave their way to art by drawing pictures for magazine stories that young authors write to pave their way to literature. As Sue was sketching a pair of elegant horse-show riding trousers and a monocle of the figure of the hero, an Idaho cowboy, she heard a low sound several times repeated. She went quickly to the bedside. Johnsey's eyes were open wide. She was looking out the window and counting backward. 12, she said, and a little later, 11. And then 10, and 9, and then 8, and 7, almost together. Sue looked solicitously out of the window. What was there to count? There was only a bare, dreary yard to be seen, and the blank side of the brick house 20 feet away. An old ivy vine, gnarled and decayed at the roots, climbed halfway up the brick wall. The cold breath of autumn had stricken its leaves from the vine until its skeleton branches clung almost bare to the crumbling bricks. "What is it, dear?" asked Sue. 6, said Johnsey in almost a whisper. "They're falling faster now. 3 days ago there were almost 100. It made my head ache to count them, but now it's easy. There goes another one. There are only 5 left now." "5 what, dear? Tell your Sudie." "Leaves on the ivy vine. When the last one falls, I must go too. I've known that for 3 days. Didn't the doctor tell you?" "Oh, I've never heard of such nonsense," complained Sue with magnificent scorn. "What have old ivy leaves to do with your getting well? And you used to love that vine so, you naughty girl. Don't be a goosey. Why, the doctor told me this morning that your chances for getting well real soon were... Let's see exactly what he said. He said the chances were 10 to 1. Why, that's almost as good as a chance as we have in New York when we ride in the streetcars or walk past a new building. Try to take some broth now, and let Sudie go back to her drawing, so she can sell the editor man with it and buy port wine for her sick child, and pork chops for her greedy self." "You needn't get any more wine," said Johnsey, keeping her eyes fixed out the window. "There goes another. No, I don't want any broth. That leaves just 4. I want to see the last one fall before it gets dark. Then I'll go too." "Johnsey, dear," said Sue, bending over her, "will you promise me to keep your eyes closed and not look out that window until I'm done working? I must hand these drawings in by tomorrow. I need the light, or I'd draw the shade down." "Couldn't you draw in the other room?" asked Johnsy coldly. "I'd rather be here by you," said Sue. "Besides, I don't want you to keep looking at those silly ivy leaves." "Tell me as soon as you've finished," said Johnsy, closing her eyes and lying white and still as a fallen statue, "because I want to see the last one fall. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of thinking. I want to turn loose my hold on everything and go sailing down, down, just like one of those poor tired leaves." "Try to sleep," said Sue. "I must call Behrman up to be my model for the old hermit miner. I'll not be gone a minute. Don't try to move till I come back." Old Behrman was a painter who lived on the ground floor beneath them. He was past 60 and had a Michelangelo's Moses beard curling down from the head of a satyr along with the body of an imp. Behrman was a failure in art. 40 years he had wielded the brush without getting near enough to touch the hem of his mistress's robe. He had been always about to paint a masterpiece, but had never yet begun it. For several years he had painted nothing except now and then a daub in the line of commerce or advertising. He earned a little by serving as a model to those young artists in the colony who could not pay the price of a professional. He drank gin to excess and still talked of his coming masterpiece. For the rest, he was a fierce little old man who scoffed terribly at softness in anyone, and who regarded himself as a special mastiff in waiting to protect the two young artists in the studio above. Sue found Behrman smelling strongly of juniper berries in his dimly lighted den below. In one corner was a blank canvas on an easel that had been waiting there for 25 years to receive the first line of the masterpiece. She told him of Johnsy's fancy, and how she feared she would indeed, light and fragile as a leaf herself, float away when her slight hold upon the world grew weaker. Old Behrman, with his red eyes plainly streaming, shouted his contempt and derision for such idiotic imaginings. "Was," he cried, "is there people in the world mit foolishness to die because leaves they drop off from a confounded vine? I have not heard of such a thing. No, I will not pose as a model for your fool hermit dunderhead. Why do you allow that silly business to come in the brain of her? Ach, that poor little Miss Johnsy." "She's very ill and weak," said Sue, "and the fever has left her mind morbid and full of strange fancies." "Very well, Mr. Behrman. If you do not care to pose for me, you needn't, but I think you are an horrid old flipperty-gibbet." "You are just like a woman," yelled Behrman. "Who said I will not pose? Go on, I commit you. For half an hour I have been trying to say that I am ready to pose. God, is there not any place which one so good as Miss Johnsy shall lie sick? Some day I will paint a masterpiece, and we shall all go away. God, yes." Johnsy was sleeping when they went upstairs. Sue pulled the shade down to the window-sill and motioned Behrman into the other room. In there they peered out the window fearfully at the ivy vine. Then they looked at each other for a moment without speaking. A persistent cold rain was falling, mingled with snow. Behrman, in his old blue shirt, took his seat as the hermit miner on an upturned kettle for a rock. When Sue awoke from an hour's sleep the next morning, she found Johnsy with dull, wide-open eyes staring at the drawn green shade. "Pull it up. I want to see," she ordered in a whisper. Wearily, Sue obeyed. But lo! After the beating rain and the fierce gusts of wind that had endured through the livelong night, there yet stood out against the brick wall one ivy leaf. It was the last one on the vine. Still dark green near its stem, with its serrated edges tinted with the yellow of dissolution and decay, it hung bravely from the branch some 20 feet above the ground. "It is the last one," said Johnsy. "I thought it would surely fall during the night. I heard the wind. It will fall today, and I shall die at the same time." "Dear, dear," said Sue, leaning her worn face down to the pillow. "Think of me. If you won't think of yourself, what would I do?" But Johnsy did not answer. The lonesomest thing in all the world is a soul when it is making ready to go on its mysterious, far journey. The fancy seemed to possess her more strongly as one by one the ties that bound her to friendship and to the earth were loosed. The day wore away, and even through the twilight they could see the lone ivy leaf clinging to its stem against the wall. And then, with the coming of the night, the north wind was again loosed, while the rain still beat against the windows and pattered down from the low Dutch eaves. When it was light enough, Johnsy the Merciless commanded that the shade be raised. The ivy leaf was still there. Johnsy lay for a long time looking at it, and then she called to Sue, who was stirring her chicken broth over the gas stove. "I've been a bad girl, Sudie," said Johnsy. "Something has made that last leaf stay there to show me how wicked I was. It is a sin to want to die. You may bring me a little broth now, and some milk with a little port in it, and... No, bring me the hand mirror first, and then pack some pillows about me, and I'll sit up and watch you cook." An hour later she said, "Sudie, some day I hope to paint the Bay of Naples." The doctor came in the afternoon, and Sue had an excuse to go into the hallway as he left. "Even chances," said the doctor, taking Sue's thin, shaking hand in his. "With good nursing, you'll win. And now I must see another case I have downstairs. Behrman, his name is. Some kind of artist, I believe. Pneumonia, too. He's an old, weak man, and the attack is acute. There is no hope for him. But he goes to the hospital today to be made more comfortable." The next day, the doctor said to Sue, "She's out of danger. You won. Nutrition and care now, that's all." And that afternoon Sue came to the bed where Johnsy lay, contentedly knitting a very blue and very useless woolen shoulder scarf, and put one arm around her, pillows and all. "I have something to tell you, White Mouse," she said. "Mr. Behrman died of pneumonia today in the hospital. He was ill only 2 days. The janitor found him in the morning of the first day in his room downstairs, helpless with pain. His shoes and clothing were wet through and icy cold. They couldn't imagine where he had been on such a dreadful night, and then they found a lantern still lighted, and a ladder that had been dragged from its place, and some scattered brushes, and a palette with green and yellow colors mixed on it, and... Look out the window, dear, at the last ivy leaf on the wall. Didn't you wonder why it never fluttered or moved when the wind blew? Ah, darling, it's Behrman's masterpiece. He painted it there the night the last leaf fell." End of The Last Leaf.
The Last Leaf is a short story published by O. Henry in 1907 in his collection The Trim Lamp and Other Stories. It is set in Greenwich Village, which is a real place in New York. This is a typical O. Henry saga, and it has been adapted to film and stage many times. Notable films include the 1917 silent version. In 1952, it was one of 5 stories adapted for O. Henry's Full House. And then again, in 2013, a Hindi film called Lutara was based on it. I hope you enjoyed this one. I thought about this one for a long time before presenting it to you. I found it quite uplifting and even hopeful. There are so many layers to this one, it really should be listened to more than once. I encourage you to do so. Now, in case you didn't catch it from the 5-minute mystery, I have decided to put the podcast on YouTube. This really is an experiment to see how well the show performs there. I'm hoping to open a whole new audience. Now, you might be asking yourself, how much did it cost Ron to do this? The answer, nothing. With the help of my service provider, Libsyn, all I had to do was create some art, jump a couple of hoops, and whiz-bang pop, Ron's Amazing Stories is part of the YouTube family. Thank you very much, YouTube, and thank you, Google. That's it for this podcast. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, why not tell me about it? Send a tweet, post a note on Facebook, or leave a comment on the website. Any feedback is always appreciated. If you want to keep up with what's happening on Ron's Amazing Stories, please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or sign up for the weekly newsletter. All the links you'll need and access to the blog can be found at ronsamazingstories.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.